Hello everybody, it's been a while. Yes, it is the silly one back doing some Battletech stuff that isn't actually me playing Chester. Yeah, this is me catching up from where I was before Christmas, which for those of you that note the time on this is now the 1st of May, so I haven't done anything like this for January, February, March and April for a number of reasons, generally being incredibly busy being one of the main ones and getting involved in lots of other stuff. Before Christmas I wanted to get this particular one done. It never happened. And it's taken me until now to do that, so my apologies for that. Okay, so this is not a gameplay video. This is me continuing with the development of the meta. And for those of you that were listening and can remember back that far, because let's face it, it's a long time, then you will know that I was talking about Arsenal, and we reviewed the Arsenal set and some of the problems, or I alluded to some of the problems that came out of the Arsenal set. And this particular recording is to look at those issues, which is why I've got this text document in front of me, and look at how that changed a lot of the meta before Wizards had to act. And it seems to me that they really didn't want to do much work on this, much like they didn't want to do much work playtesting Arsenal straight off. So this email is from Adam Conus. Here it is in here, Adam Conus, whose email at the time was wildcard@wizards.com. Okay, and this is taken from the Battletech Digest on Monday the 20th of April 1998 at about 5:45 in the afternoon. So there were a load of questions that came out after Arsenal. These all got put through by players to Wizards, and they decided to answer them because they didn't want to answer the same question 16 different times. Makes sense, although it did take them a while to do it. So here is the official rulings from them. Pilot and mission cards with abilities that apply to mechs do not apply to vehicles or battle armor. All other cards and abilities that apply to mech do not apply to vehicles and battle armor. Okay, so if you ever wonder if a particular effect applies to a vehicle, ask yourself if the effect in question came from a pilot or a mission. If the answer is no, the effect should apply. So basically any pilot abilities and any mission cards, just treat everything as mech and not unit, which is what it then became for. So following up to this, somebody said, does Bjorn Jorgensen do 5 additional damage to vehicles and battle armor? Let's have a quick look at Bjorn. Here is the original Bjorn. I always think he's got an amazing white ponytail because of the ghost bear symbol out the back. He says mech piloted by Bjorn deals +5 damage to any target other than a mech. Well, when you get the ruling, it says pilot cards do not recognize vehicles and battle armor as mechs. Therefore, Bjorn, a pilot card, will deal +5 damage to a non-mech unit. So Bjorn, this iteration of Bjorn, does +5 to every vehicle. Okay, there we go. Second, does the ability of the Chaos March veteran activate in a battle against vehicles as well? Yes, Chaos March veteran doesn't specify that it only gains its ability against mechs. It simply says battle. Battle can occur against any type of unit. Okay, that makes sense. Bjorn, crazy as hell. Chaos March veteran makes sense. Then we have at the start of this is follow-up, exactly the same, and here we have, can you use hidden location to prevent pilots, which are technically command cards, from being attacked? And the answer is if you want, although we haven't got an idea why, because pilots cannot be attacked in the first place. It does nothing. If you apply hidden location to a pilot or enhancement, the mech or whatever underneath will still be attacked as normal. Okay, seems like fairly straightforward. Question: In the rules additions contained in the booster packs, it says that enhancements may be played on vehicles. So you can put any enhancement on vehicles, even ones that say play only on a mech. What I would like to know is, for instance, could you put access to extra munitions on a demolisher? Or could you play C cubed retrofit, so that's C3 retrofit, ECM retrofit, or NARC retrofit on a vehicle? Okay, so the answer to that is yes, they all count. Non-pilot command cards treat vehicles and battle armor as mechs. Sorry, treat them as mechs? You've said they're getting mixed up in the semantics, isn't it? Only pilots and mission cards will not treat vehicles and battle armor as mechs. So they're just command cards. So they would work. Okay. Question. Battle armor says it cannot attack block alone. Can I have A, 2 battle armor units to block? If so, their speed would be slow. Okay. B, a battle armor unit attacking blocking with a vehicle. Yes and yes are the answers to that. Obviously, when you read battle armor, it cannot block or attack alone. Let's just have a look at one of them. Let's look at covert, because no one plays with covert. So here's the covert elemental point, and let's just pull this out so this is nice and big for you guys. There you go. Attacks, guards, blocks like a mech, and cannot attack or block alone. It can attack and block with other coverts. If it attacks with another vehicle, which wouldn't be this one, it would only really apply to the inner sphere ones, because all the vehicles were inner sphere. You know, Arsenal was like 65% inner sphere, 20% everybody, and 15% clan or something stupid. Where is it? Attacks or blocks at the speed of the fastest Omni mech. So it wouldn't get any speed bonus in that respect. What does it say for the normal battle armor? There are only 2 of them in here. Where are they? Here's the original one. Yeah, it says exactly the same. So this is always going to be slow because there are no Omni. Well, actually, that's not true. There are Omni mechs in the inner sphere. There just weren't very many at that time. Okay. Okay, where's my text gone? Here we go. What are legacy cards? A legacy card represents the lasting contribution made by an important figure in Battletech universe with his or her house. If you have no cards in play from that figure's house aside from the legacy card, you must scrap it. Okay, and that kind of says in play you must scrap it, which implies that in the missions phase, if you kill the last mech and there are no other Marek cards on the table, then Janus Marek's legacy would disappear, or any of the other ones if that's their respective affiliation. Question. If I use war funds to bring a card like strip mining into play, that would normally provide an additional deployment. So do I get an additional deployment? No. Because the card is not being deployed in the normal manner, and you don't get the option of deploying it revealed or not, you will not get the additional deployment. Okay, when you use the special damage ability of the Sloth Squad, only when it's in battle, question mark, correct. Its ability that's played in battle, it's played at the same time damage is assigned and mission cards are played. Okie dokie, Q. Question, do you roll a d6 to scrap a vehicle when it takes structure damage, or when it takes any damage, or just takes damage? I thought, but others have disagreed. So the answer to that is any damage, not just structure damage. So you only have to send damage to it. If it bounces on the armor, it rolls. And what you got to remember is that this, for a lot of people who've been playing it for a long period of time, this is like second nature. But the rules that were printed on the Arsenal boosters for people to try and do all of this were very, very vague and very succinct. Okay. What's the point of the Fire Falcon Prime? Yeah, we'll leave that one out. Will the effect of work stoppage last even after I scrap it? No. The effect ends if the card is scrapped by any player. Question, can I play for my construction asset cost if I deploy the asset again after work stoppage stops my asset? Do you mean if you have work stoppage cancel munitions, can you get munitions again by playing a card that provides munitions? That would be no. Okay, no. Cards, even ones played after work stoppage, will provide the asset. Will provide the asset, while work stoppage will not provide the asset. Will provide the asset. Well, work stoppage is in play. I think that's a does not. Question: with temporary ceasefire, do mechs do 0 damage, vehicles do normal damage, or question mark? Correct. Mission cards that apply to mechs do not apply to vehicles or battle armor, so they will still deal damage when a mission card prevents a mech from dealing damage. That is just monstrously crazy. As we will see, you rock over with a load of your units or mechs, and the guy blocks with a couple of vehicles, plays a temporary ceasefire, you do nothing, and then everybody shoots the crap out of them from your side because they're vehicles. It gets worse with single combat, as we will see. Okie dokie. Question: Arsenal also had many typos and other anomalies. For instance, C3 talks about mechs even if it's on a vehicle. Let's look at the partisan. Vehicle acts, guards and blocks like a mech. If damage, roll a die, d6, scrap the vehicle. C3, each mech in a C3 group that attacks at least one other mech can get C3 attack. So this is a vehicle and they've used the word mech. Okay. And this shows, highlights a fundamental balls up here. The Arsenal rules make it clear that options that state they work on mechs also apply to vehicles. Options on mechs apply to vehicles, but missions and commands don't. It's not a mistake, it's being consistent. I think I might argue it's being downright confusing. Okay, consistent with the template established prior to vehicle being conceived. There's an I missing there. Ill-conceived was probably the best phrase to put into there. Question: also, the design has some very bass mistakes, like the one above. It seems to me that Arsenal was poorly play tested, at least with other sets. Question: they are not answer. They are not mistakes. The Arsenal rules are relatively clear, on how to deal with a mech versus vehicle text on cards. The rule of thumb is simple: mission and pilot cards and abilities do not treat vehicles or battle armor cards as mechs. All other cards and abilities do. Now, instead of being consistent, you just split everything into different pools. Okay. If you play a card that lets one or more mechs of a group deal damage directly to the stockpile, starter version, Lance Division, end run, etc., do those mechs still receive the benefit from other mechs which are ostensibly blocked, e.g. C3 and ECM? And the answer to that is yes, those mechs will receive damage as normal, which is the point many players seem to miss. The only thing funky going on is that some of the attacking mechs are dealing damage to the target instead of the blocking units, as is normally the case. Cool. Question: Sharpshooter, Redline, Pilot both say when mechs are piloted, use the feature they are good for, Alpha Strike and Overheat respectively. Does their bonus get added to the base attack of the mech in addition to or in replace of the existing bonus? E.g., if a sharpshooter is on a Hunchback 2C, the Hunchback Alpha Strikes, its final attacking value is 7. Let's just look at the Hunchback while we're here. This is fairly straightforward. Most of you probably know the answer. So if we look at the Hunchback, the 2C, 145, Alpha 5. If a sharpshooter is on this, does this become, and I'll put that up there so I can flick between them. Here's the sharpshooter. It gets +2. Whenever a mech uses Alpha Strike, it gets +2 attack. Using Alpha Strike does not deplete the mech. So this isn't a particularly smart question. This is quite clear to me. You do not deplete the mech and it gets +2 attack. And this says 5, so I don't get +2 attack unless I use the Alpha Strike ability, which gives +5, and therefore the total is the +5 on top of the normal 5 and the bonus 2 from the sharpshooter, which makes 12. Okie dokie. And the answer to this is the +2 bonus is in the red light, is in addition to the normal stuff. Okay. this is a new question. If a vehicle attacks a card that is under construction and is unblocked, is the card revealed, or is there one blocker taken? Or if there is one blocker taken out by FMO, is the card revealed even if it was a mech that was attacking? So this is the rule book saying that if you attack it with a mech, you reveal it, and his question is basically, does that still apply to vehicles? The answer is yes, yes. And then there's a very, very nice nice comment here from a guy called the Mech Boy, who I think his name was Stephen. He's a really good guy, very constructive, good player. And the deafening silence you hear is the complete absence of any indication of repair the mission card rulings before 3rd edition is released out. So this is all about repair and assembly. And if we look at assembly, where are we? This is support, isn't it? Alright, which I really can't type. And this got clarified, but if we look at the original version, here it is. During your reload repair phase, you may pay 1 to repair 1 point of damage to 1 mech. Compilates, who are a subset of commands and missions, don't apply, so it probably does. But so what the hell happened? Well, am I in the right version? I am in the right version. I've got so many bits of both here. So what happened? People started doing crazy things. Okay, so let's just look at. I'm just going to pull a few decks up, and these are reasonably representative. These are quite a mixture. There's one of these that's probably quite famous, and I'm not sure who invented it, because I think everybody basically invented it. So this is a Liao deck, and let's just pull this out so you can see this. Okie dokie. And this is probably the first instance of a Suicide Troops deck. I think this is Stormcrow's deck. Okay, so for reference, Stormcrow was a guy who is basically Barry Young's playtesting partner. Okay, so good player. Okay, so here's the deck. As we can see down the bottom, 6 Suicide Troops. There they all go. And Suicide Troops are played on vehicles. Okay, and this is where it gets crazy, because here are our vehicles. Here's a Lightning, here's a Burke. There are 4 Zephyrs. Now you might think at this point 5 cost for a Zephyr is a lot, which it is, but it's got ECM and it's fast and it dashes. So you can chuck this out, drop a Suicide Troops on it and go and smack them straight away. Cavalry is also a VTOL and it dashes. The Shrek at 334 is pretty solid and it dishes out damage. And then you've got the Pinto, which at this point, remember, Comstar was not a house until we got to Commander's Edition. So this would go into practically any Inner Sphere deck, even though they've given it the Comstar keyword. And they did that from the start. They didn't even get round to sorting it out until Commander's Edition, fixing all the mistakes. Then we got the Demon, which I think is pretty good value for what it is, a 364. I mean, a Demon and a Shrek coming over at you for 8, a 334 and a 264. And remember, at this point, the scrap rolls are 1 or are a 6. Not a 5 and a 6, just a 6. That's a lot of damage. Sun Tzu to bring back the subterfuge cards. Which subterfuge cards are we talking about? It's a Liao deck. We're bringing back the manipulation of Romano, which basically is tap all guarding mechs, and then you wade in with all of your fasts if they can't block. And remember, a lot of the other cards, the other decks at this point were vehicle swarms, and most of them were slow. So having this deck of fasts was really good. And all your VTOLs, which generally are fast, apart from the Yellow Jacket, which isn't in this deck. and cannot be blocked. So this is a great way of getting through and absolutely loading down on the suicide troops counters. One vehicle repair barn, because this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy, and this is why the question about assembly came up, I think, because when you look at this one, it's a 0 cost. Okay, it's a 4-3, which is decent for a resource. I wouldn't play it with anything less than that generally, with the odd exception for the vitals like black market. Tap for a resource, fine. Tap repair 1 point of damage to each of your vehicles. Each of your vehicles. So that's assembly on steroids. If you've got 6 vehicles on the table, that repairs 1 point of damage for each vehicle. It's just bonkers. And that's why people thought assembly is for mechs, vehicle repair barn is for vehicles. And rightly so. I mean, how strong is that? Crazy strong. 3 politics, what have we got? 8 logistics, 8 tactics, suicide troops, and then 2 temporary ceasefires. And as we know from the ruling from Adam Konas, temporary ceasefire applies to mechs. It's a mission card, it does not apply to vehicles. Play during battle, roll a die, 1, your mechs deal no damage and you draw a card. Hey, I'm playing this, I have no mechs. I don't deal any damage from my mechs, which I haven't got any of anyway, and I get to draw a card after the mission. Okay, so it fails, but drawing a card and my no unit, my no mechs doing no damage is hardly a disadvantage. And then 2 to 6, all mechs deal no damage. So this is the case where my opponent does not deal damage, and then I kick the shit out of them with my 3 demons and 2 Shreks and whatever else it is, and do 14, 16, 18 damage. It's bonkers ruling. Okay, this deck would kill a lot of them. There is a sideboard, 3 Rocky Gorges. Okay, sorry. Tom Smith, yes, falsified maps, great. Gorge Master, great. Sticking Rocking Gorge in a sideboard was not the revolutionary thing that a lot of people think that Tom Smith was. It was around beforehand, especially with vehicle swarms, because when they take damage, they have to roll a die. This is a guy that actually uses his brain and comes up with some good ideas. 2 Forge Mission Orders in case he needs to get his VTOLs through. And Underworld Connections in case, do you know what? I just want to add another Suicide Troops counter. That's crazy. Yeah. This got superseded by Max's Apocalypse Liao deck, where the VTOLs became the main focus. Suicide Troops went on there, and they used Superior Nav to untap and tap them again, because basically that was a much more efficient way of A, doing additional damage, and B, getting another counter on there. And that's what evolved out of this. This is a vehicle only deck. Okie dokie. So what have we got next? Let's look at this was a British deck made by Rob Matthews, and he played this at a tournament in Welwyn Garden City. I know Rob, he didn't have a great deal of cards when Arsenal came out. So this deck seems a bit janky or a bit convoluted, and probably it would have been a lot better if he'd had more or multiple copies of some of these cards. But this is what he's running, so let's have a look at this. Here we go, view tiled. So we have 0, 1L, 2M, free deploy, Bulldog, 2, 3, 2 damage. Okay. A couple of Burks doing 4 damage, a load of cavalries, VTOLs, dashes, 032s, chipping away at the stockpile. He says he only had 1 galleon, but you know that's pretty solid at 052. A couple of Pintos, 3 Saladins, a black market, a load of resources in logistics, munitions, and some tactics, some war funds in there, and even a couple of weapons depots. And again, I suspect this was because of limited collection. And then 6 Night Skies, which are actually really good vehicle hunters. Night Sky has 2 attack and +1 damage to a mech that's the same speed or lower. That's the hand-to-hand ability, which they didn't even work out until Commander's Edition and put that in place. It does 3 damage to something slower than it, which is quite useful. It can overheat if you want, but it also has jump. And that's probably the one thing that you need to see in this deck, which isn't actually that heavy on tactics at all. There's just the cavalry in here, but you can jump the Night Sky and you can play one of the missions. The Wolfhound is in there as well for moderate durability, and again another decent vehicle hunter. And then the 2 missions: Final Push, 2 of, front-loaded supply lines, everything Alpha strikes it gets +2, which if this is going to die and this is going to die, then getting extra damage out of them is crazy, or really good. And then you've got some hidden reserves in there in order to draw more, because you've got free deploy cards coming out your rear iris. Sideboard, Underworld Connections, Rocket. No, that's not even the sideboard. That's carried over because I copied the deck. Ignore that. Okie dokie. This is fun. This is fun. I love this deck. This is called Burden on the Bearer. And this is for people that turned up every week and played the same Steiner Bear of McKinsey Hammer deck. And let's just check the bearer out a minute. Here's the bearer, Bear of McKinsey Hammer. 1 initiative. When it attacks, it roll a dice. 1 to 3, no effect. And 4 to 6, untap it. Okie dokie. So what you got to remember with this one is that this also works, or bearer decks involved and included single combat, because single combat was deemed to be an attack. So you would attack with your bearer and you would roll it, and if it untapped, great. And then you go again, and when it didn't untap, you use single combat to initiate another combat that you were going to win, and then you got another roll to do your untapping again. So single combat was used to basically help give you another roll for your untapping of your bearer. This one's called Burden on the Bearer, and it's a St. Ives deck, and it totally abuses dropship intercept to deplete the bearer. So it doesn't matter if the bearer untaps, or even if you single combat it to untap it, because it's depleted, which means it deals no damage. So this deck was a vehicle deck that was designed to completely screw bearer decks, and those people that went down the cheesy McMallet route of playing bearer decks all the time. 8 logistics, 9 tactics, 6 weapons depots, 2 final pushes to finish things off, and then you've got 6 Saladin, 6 Cavalry, 6 Pinto, 6 J Edgar, 6 Zephyr. Everything is fast. Everything is fast. But for the people that didn't think the Zephyr got played, there you go. The sideboard had at least 5 carpet bombing in it, and the idea was that if you weren't playing a bearer deck, maybe you would take out the 5 dropship intercepts, you would play 5 carpet bombings, and that would mean that all of the units would take damage. Some would die, like the Saladin, because carpet bombing does 2 damage to everything. It even says each mech and vehicle. Wow, nice going, Wizards. You actually got something right in the wording. And the idea being, as we said, deplete the bearer, smack the stockpile with fast. Probably should be carpet bombing in the main deck and drop ship in the sideboard, but hey, bucket load of fun, and nice to put that out there. Right, so next we have is this a max deck? This is a max deck, and this is what they called a combined arms deck, and basically it is vehicles and mechs. A bit like the one that Rob Matthews played, or we saw a few minutes ago. This one is slightly more mainstream, is probably the better phrase. So 6 Bulldogs, 6 more Bulldogs, 3 Burks, 6 J Edgars, 6 Saladins, 2 Black Market, 8 Logistics, 7 Munitions, 4 War Funds, and 6 Night Skies. A final push, and 5 hidden reserves. You'll note that there's no tactics in here, and there's also no think tank. So how do you play final push? Simple. You jump the Night Sky. Play final push. Doesn't matter really what the other guy plays. Final push allows you to get 2 across, and you can see that this is just vehicle city. And the final one I'm going to pull out is this is probably the atypical vehicle deck, and the way to describe this is the Bulldog swarm more than anything else, because it features all of the Bulldogs. I mean, this Bulldog here, the normal one, 1-1M, a 2-3-3 slow, is particularly good value. I played the draft event possibly a year or so ago, and I actually drafted one of these in my Arsenal booster. Or it was sealed, sorry. And I played AMT, and this went straight in the deck. Because, and I did this, I think it was twice in the end, but I played Munitions first and put a Bulldog on the table. First turn, guy plays a resource, I go Munitions Bulldog, he struggles, I either smack the CUC or the stockpile for 3 with it. It's just incredibly good value. But what people thought was even better value was this one, which costs you nothing and is a free deploy. And you could just throw these out left, right and centre as you draw them. And the same goes for this one. Okay, it's less damage with 1 damage, but you've got a missile and it's a free deploy. So your first turn is probably L Bulldog free deploy, unless of course you go in second, which is L Bulldog free deploy, other Bulldog free deploy, munitions, throw everything else out that you want. And for those of you that saw the Wolf's Dragoons dual stockpile match that I played against Chester a couple of streams back, I think it's 104, 105, where he thumps me in the first game because Wolf's Dragoons is really hard, and then I played a crazy missile deck, which I got nowhere with, and then I played a free deploy deck with sustained pressure. And on about turn 5, I had 9 units on the board because they were all free deploy. We'll know how effective free deploy is. So those 2 just got thrown out. Burke is just strong damage. One cost for 4 damage is just great value. And the Saladin is your early blocker. And surprise, surprise, another free deploy. So I've got 18 free deploy units in this deck. A black market. I mean, the resources are scarily scarce. Scarily. 5 logistics, 4 munitions, and a think tank, 3 war funds. The chances of double mulliganing on that are just bonkers. I think there are too many units, or there aren't enough. Ferrofibrous upgrade gives them an armor and prevents damage, and if the damage is prevented it means you're not rolling a dice, which is good, and you can prevent 3 damage, and it's a free deploy, and you get to draw a card. You cycle your deck. And then the other unit we've got in here is the Davian battle armor, the Sloth Squad, 022, not particularly durable, but it's mental because you roll a die, 1 to 3, the mech takes 1 to 3 structure. Ouch. Eat your heart out. Missiles, because it's structure damage, not against the armor, structure. And then it's a free deploy and you draw a card. So these get thrown out left, right and centre. So you've got 10 draw cards there. You've got 2 final pushes to finish the game, and you've got a think tank. No jump anywhere else, so it's going to have to be a think tank. And then you've got 6 hidden reserves to just draw your deck, and you flood the board. Okay, and the other thing here is What's going to stop you? What is going to stop you? Well, creative terraforming to get rid of the rocky gorge in the sideboard. 3 temporary ceasefire for anybody that plays with a mech. You've got a mech in your deck. No, it's worthless. It's totally worthless. It does nothing and I'll kill it. And then additionally, from your own point of view, defensive embankment is quite nice. Each of your vehicles gets +1 attack and +1 armor, which is really strong because your entire deck is full of vehicles. They all are. So again, well thought out. And yeah, what happened in tournaments? What happened in tournaments? People played vehicle swarms. Once temporary ceasefire was worked out, people did not play mechs. The whole game, which is about mechs, you know, there are 840 cards, probably 300 plus of them are mechs. He says, that's just a rough guess. And none of them are playable or played by people that have vehicles or tanks. You know, big because the rules don't apply. And this is why the whole thing was a total mess. Cards that were staples or solid or at least realistically played, like temporary ceasefire, didn't apply. Okay, the game became more about throwing out cheap units onto the table and dominating, and whoever drew the final push first would just attack in a big wave, play final push. Temporary ceasefire wouldn't stop them, hidden heavy fog wouldn't stop them, or whatever else. And there was nothing to stop it. There wasn't a card on the table to stop it. You know, you can reduce some of the damage with fog shrouded moors, maybe. You can make it a bit more painful with civilian settlement. You can try and make them roll with rocky gorge or defensive embankment or whatever else. But in reality, there was nothing that you could do about it. It was just who got the most on the table and who found their rocky gorge. Sorry, not their rocky gorge, the final push first. And that's how it went for a number of weeks. And anybody who played with mechs complained the hell and said this isn't fair. And it wasn't, because, well, let's face it, Wizards of the Coast screwed up. They screwed up on Arsenal. They didn't play test it. They didn't, and you even saw the article in the last one, I think it was Julius 25, where they've put their own vehicle and mech combined arms type deck together. They didn't think that people would just play only vehicles. Well, I'm sorry. I am sorry, but where you've got something like this for one cost, you've got a 2, 3, 4 for 1 for the inner sphere. Okay, and in comparison, you were looking, and I'm going to go for the covert again, just so it gets a bit of screen time. You look at the elemental point 043. Okay, for the clan, it's 1L more buyout. Okay, it's got jump, it's got AP, but let's face it, the Burke goes across the table, the covert elemental point blocks, the covert elemental point dies, and you make a 1 to 6 die roll on the Burke to see if it survives, because the 3 armor is just going to bounce off the front of it. Alright, so it's going to take 1 structure. Yeah, so you can see where all the power is. And people were unhappy. People left the game. People complained. And in the end, Wizards agreed that there was a problem. It took them a while to believe it, you know, and you've seen the line from Adam Konis about pilot abilities and mission cards that target mech do not affect vehicles. That's just them trying to put some face on this, trying to make it work. And then at that point, they know they've dropped the ball seriously. So what came out of this was actually an online survey stroke poll, which they put on a link to on their website. It was put around a number of other places, primarily Alpha Strike, because that's where all the online community was. It was put on the digest as well. And basically, They said, these are the options, what do you think? And the options were, to be honest, shit. It was something like a vehicle should scrap on a 3, 4 or 5, which was a bit too much. And you know, vehicles shouldn't do this, vehicles do that, whatever else. And most people chose the least worst option. And the least worst option was basically vehicles scrap on a 5 or a 6, and you had a limit of 10 in the deck, which made no sense in the slightest, because you're using a multiple of 5 where your game is based on a multiple of 6. You know, why are you limiting it to 5 cards, 10 cards in the deck, where you can therefore have 2 lots? So and the limit is 10 vehicles per deck, so you can't even have 6 and 6 where everything is based on 6. If they'd have said 12 vehicles per deck and 5 on 6 roll, nobody would have batted an eyelid. They would have just said, that makes sense, that works for us. And from that point of view, they were in free fall. They were trying to cover their tracks, save the game, whatever else. The damage was probably already done. Okay. So everything came out, the rules were changed, 10 vehicles to a deck, a roll on a 5 or 6. I think this is now reflected in, and if I look at the Magi, no, not the Magi, the Zukov. Because this is a Crusade vehicle, if Zukov is damaged, roll a die on a 5 or 6, scrap it. So they changed that, and the Commander's Edition book, rule book, was changed to represent those. Okay, they weren't. As I said, the damage was done. A lot of people were put off. This is April, May time, so this is 27 years ago effectively, and people are building up to Worlds in the summer. So the fact that they changed everything really pissed everybody off again. Okay, it's not quite as bad as some of the games I've played and seen where they put a new patch and expansion out 2 weeks before Worlds and say everything's built on that, which is crazy. But anyway, so what happened next? They had a lot of placating to do. They had a lot of fan base to sell on this. They even ran an event which they called the R&D Challenge, and that's probably the next thing up from my listing. I have the decks from the R&D Challenge. What was particularly disappointing from the R&D Challenge is that Wizards of the Coast cheated. Okay, so the idea was they'll have a load of Wizards of the Coast dev team, Battletech team playing the game, and they invited any players that wanted to come along to come and play in the tournament. And most of the Wizards of the Coast guys put together the same deck, and going into the final round, it was very clear that none of them were going to get into the final or the top 4. So they rigged the pairings on one of the matches so that the second place player, Charlie Cantino, played another Wizards of the Coast guy who basically capitulated and let him get the win, so he jumped into the top 4 in order to play in the semi-finals, and he came second in the end. But everyone was aware of that, and again, it didn't really embrace or support the player base, where you have to fix things in order to get your guy through. And the deck was okay. It wasn't anything great, but we'll see some of the crazy things that they thought were happening and how far they were divorced from the actual playing meta, where people from across the world could pull ideas together, and many brains are better than one, and you have clever people in there to beat the hell out of them, to be honest. And then there were a number of things that came out of this. So vehicles got restricted, but free deploy decks didn't. So there was something that turned out of this called the Evil Urban Mech deck, which is on my list of things to do shortly. There are the decks from the R&D challenge to do. There is the birth of Mechless, which came out of the fact that nobody could play many vehicle decks anymore, so they just thought, we're not playing decks with mechs in, so let's not play decks with mechs in, but we won't play decks with vehicles either, and we'll go Mechless. And I've got some of the stuff that people posted about trying to get Mechless decks to work, and the evolution of that as well. And that's important because a Mechless deck came seventh in Worlds that year, and Zvi Moschwitz, who played it, drew the only deck that stood a chance of beating it, which was Peter Sundholm's deck. If you look at the other decks that year, he would have been quite happy playing any of the other ones, and he would have, apart from the odd resource screw and whatever else, been very, very favoured or whooped their arse, for want of a better phrase, because they were particularly weak to his deck. But that's another story, that's another day, that's another dollar, that's another stream. Anyway, thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, post a comment, whatever else. Apparently that makes me more visible. I'm not sure if I want to go for visibility or not. It's something I've never really pushed, but I suppose if you do it, then I can't argue. So go do it if you like it. And stay tuned, because I'm going to be back for some more soon. I've already got some of this already pre-recorded and loaded, and I'll be back for another stream on another day for another dollar. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves. It's a big bad world out there.